They called me paranoid, said I was seeing things that weren't there, reading too much into coincidences. But here's what they didn't understand. I wasn't paranoid. I was paying attention. And when you pay attention long enough, patterns emerge, numbers tell stories. Silence speaks louder than words ever could. My business partner thought he was clever, thought 15 years of friendship was enough cover, thought I trusted him too much to ever look closely. He was right about one thing. I did trust him. My name's not important. What matters is what I built. 17 years ago, I started a software consulting firm from my garage. Just me, a laptop that overheated every 40 minutes, and an idea that businesses were drowning in data they couldn't use. The first year, I made $11,000. Gross, not net. The second year, $43,000. By year 5, I had 12 employees and revenue pushing $2 million. That's when Marcus came in. We met at a tech conference in Austin. He was giving a talk on scaling B2B relationships. Confident, charismatic, had this way of making everyone in the room feel like they were the only person he was talking to. We got drinks afterward, talked until 3 in the morning about market gaps, about the clients who needed what we offered but didn't know it yet. He'd sold his previous company for a modest exit, had experience I didn't, connections I needed. I offered him a partnership, 20% equity to start, scaling to 35 as we grew. He accepted the next day. For 10 years, it worked. Marcus handled client relations and business development. I focused on product, operations, and the technical side. Classic division of labor. We grew to 90 employees. Revenue hit $28 million annually. We weren't just business partners. We were friends. Our families vacationed together. His daughter was in my daughter's wedding. When his mother passed, I delivered one of the eulogies. Trust isn't just given in business, it's built. Brick by brick, year by year, decision by decision. And I trusted Marcus completely. That was my first mistake, not trusting him, stopping paying attention. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in March. I was reviewing our quarterly financials, just routine oversight. Numbers I'd seen 100 times before, formatted the same way our CFO had been doing it for 6 years, except something felt off. Our client acquisition costs had increased by 18%, not alarming by itself. Markets shift, ad costs fluctuate, but our client retention rate had also dropped by 11%. Those two things don't usually move in the same direction at the same time. I pulled up the detailed breakdowns, started cross-referencing contract values against the summary reports Marcus provided in our board meetings. The numbers matched. Perfectly. Too perfectly. See, real business data is messy. There are always rounding differences, timing gaps between when contracts are signed and when they're entered into the system, small discrepancies that accountants reconcile later. But these numbers? Clean, rounded, synchronized in a way that suggested someone had worked backward from a desired total. I didn't say anything, not yet. Instead, I started paying attention again. I began reviewing the monthly reports Marcus submitted, not just the summaries, the underlying data, the actual contracts. Most of it was fine, legitimate, exactly what it appeared to be. But every fourth or fifth report, there were adjustments. A contract listed at $240,000 that our system showed as $215,000. A client described as expanding services who'd actually reduced their spend by 30%. Revenue categorized as new business That was actually renewals reclassified. None of it was dramatic. No single discrepancy large enough to trigger alarms. That's what made it brilliant. Over the next 2 months, I became someone I didn't recognize. I started arriving at the office before anyone else, staying late. I told my wife I was preparing for a major pitch. She believed me because I'd never given her reason not to. I built a parallel tracking system. Every client contract Marcus touched, I verified independently. I pulled raw data from our CRM, our billing system, our project management software. I didn't confront him, didn't accuse, didn't even let him know I was looking. Because if I was right, I needed to understand the full scope before I acted. And if I was wrong, I'd be destroying a 15-year friendship over paranoia and spreadsheets. But I wasn't wrong. By mid-May, I had the pattern mapped. Marcus had been systematically inflating our reported revenue by approximately 8% for the last 3 years. Not in our actual books. Those were clean. He wasn't embezzling, at least not in the traditional sense. He was inflating the numbers he reported to our board, to potential investors, to the 3 private equity firms we'd been in discussions with about a possible acquisition. See, in our shareholder agreement, there was a clause about valuation in the event of acquisition. The purchase price would be calculated as a multiple of EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Standard practice. But the multiple would be determined by growth rate and revenue stability. If he could show consistent 8% growth, even artificially, the valuation multiple would increase from maybe 4 times to 5.5 times. On a $28 million revenue base, that's a difference of $13 million in total purchase price. With his 35% stake, that meant Marcus would make an extra $4.5 million when we sold by lying, by inflating numbers just enough to clear growth thresholds without triggering audit flags. I sat in my car in the parking garage the night I confirmed it, just sat there. Engine off, lights dimming as the automatic timer ran out. 15 years, not just business, friendship, family dinners, inside jokes, shared dreams about what we were building together, and he was willing to burn it all for $4.5 million. I started the car, drove home, kissed my wife, had dinner with my kids, and I didn't say a word. Not yet. Marcus made his move in July. I was in Boston meeting with one of our largest clients when he called an emergency board meeting. Opportunity we can't miss, he said. Needs immediate decision. Our board consisted of 5 members, Marcus and me, our CFO, and 2 outside advisors, a former client, and a venture capitalist who'd tried to invest in us 3 years earlier. The opportunity was an acquisition offer. Sentinel Capital Partners, mid-sized private equity firm. They'd been circling us for 18 months, ever since their analyst team identified us as a consolidation target in the business intelligence space. They were offering $97 million for full acquisition. Marcus had been negotiating with them for 6 weeks. Without telling me, he presented it as a done deal. Sent the term sheet to the board 3 hours before the meeting. Scheduled the vote for the next day. The valuation multiple? 5.4 times EBITDA, based on the revenue numbers Marcus had been reporting, the inflated numbers. I listened to his presentation over speakerphone from my hotel room in Boston, took notes, asked 2 clarifying questions, offered no opinion. After the call ended, I sat there looking at the term sheet for 20 minutes. This was it. His end game. If the deal went through based on those numbers And the real financials came out during due diligence. The purchase price would be renegotiated down. Sentinel would have leverage. They'd drop their offer by 15, maybe 20 million. But the board wouldn't know that until after we'd signed a letter of intent, until after we'd committed to the deal. By then, Marcus would argue we had no choice but to accept the reduced terms. That backing out would damage our reputation with other potential buyers. And even at the reduced price, he'd still walk away with millions more than he deserved. Smart, cold, calculated, but he'd made one critical error. He assumed I wasn't paying attention. I called our CFO directly. Personal cell, not the company line. Sarah, I need you to do something, and I need you to not tell anyone, including Marcus. Silence on the other end. Sarah had been with us for 9 years. She was thorough, careful, loyal to the company, not to individuals. What do you need? She asked. Pull every client contract Marcus has touched in the last 3 years. The actual signed documents, not the summaries in the system. Compare them against the revenue reports he's submitted to the board. Document every discrepancy. How long do I have? 72 hours? I'll have it in 48. She delivered in 36. The report was 63 pages. Detailed, irrefutable. Organized by quarter, by client, by contract type. Total inflation over 3 years, $6.2 million, not embezzled, not stolen in the traditional sense, just misrepresented to inflate valuation, but misrepresentation in the context of an acquisition. That's fraud. Securities fraud if you want to get technical, especially if any of our board members had invested additional capital based on those reports. And our VC advisor had $200,000 in a convertible note the previous year. Based on growth metrics Marcus had fabricated, I had him. But I didn't move. Not yet. Because Marcus had taught me something valuable over 15 years. Timing is everything. You don't strike when you're angry. You don't strike when you're ready. You strike when your opponent is most exposed, most committed, most certain they've already won. So I waited. The board meeting to vote on the Sentinel acquisition was scheduled for a Thursday. I spent the week before acting exactly as Marcus expected me to act. I asked questions about the deal. Reasonable questions. Due diligence questions. The kind of questions a careful CEO asks about any major transaction. What's the transition plan? How do they value our talent? What happens to our employees? What's the earn-out structure? Marcus had answers for everything. Smooth, confident. He'd been planning this for months, maybe years. To everyone watching, I appeared to be coming around, cautiously optimistic, a little hesitant, but ultimately supportive. That was intentional. Meanwhile, I was building something else. I hired a forensic accountant, not from our area, someone 3 states away with no connection to our industry. Paid him from my personal funds. I gave him everything. Sarah's report. 3 years of board presentations, copies of actual contracts, CRM data, email threads. I need this documented like you're preparing for litigation, I told him, because I might be. He worked for 11 days. Called me on a Sunday afternoon. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, he said. The inflation is consistent enough to look like aggressive growth projection rather than fraud. But it crosses the line, especially combined with the acquisition timing. How much would it change the valuation? 15 to 18 million, depending on how Sentinel's analysts weight the factors. I thanked him, paid his invoice, filed his report in a safe deposit box I'd opened the week before. Then I called Marcus. I'm in on the Sentinel deal, I said. You were right. It's time. The relief in his voice was audible. I knew you'd see it, he said. This is what we've been building toward, everything we've worked for. We talked for 30 minutes, made plans for the announcement, discussed how we'd tell the team, what the timeline would look like. He thanked me for trusting him. I told him that's what partners do. The Thursday board meeting lasted 45 minutes. Marcus presented the deal one final time, answered questions. The outside advisors voiced support. Our CFO noted that the multiple was strong for our sector. Then we voted. Unanimous approval to proceed with Sentinel's letter of intent. Marcus shook everyone's hand, talked about celebrating later that week, about the future. I was the last one to leave the conference room. As I walked out, I turned back and looked at the table, at the chairs where we'd made 1,000 decisions over the years. And I thought about how many of those decisions had been based on lies. That night, I called Sentinel Capital Partners, asked to speak with their lead partner on our deal, a man named Richard Kelso, former investment banker, 20 years in private equity. Richard, before we sign the letter of intent, I need to disclose something. It's about our financials. Silence on the other end. What kind of discrepancy? Not a discrepancy, I said. A systematic misrepresentation by my business partner. I have documentation. I think you should see it before we proceed. I sent him Sarah's report, the forensic accountant's analysis, samples of the underlying contracts. He called me back 6 hours later. We need to meet in person without your partner present. We met at a hotel near their offices. Neutral territory. I walked him through everything. The inflation, the timeline, the fact that Marcus had been negotiating the sale based on numbers he knew were false. Richard took notes, asked detailed questions. His expression never changed. Why are you telling us this? He finally asked. You could have let the deal proceed. Let us discover it during due diligence. Maybe we wouldn't have caught it all. I looked at him directly, because I'm not interested in selling a company built on fraud, and I'm not interested in partnership with someone who is. He sat back, studied me. What do you want? I want to sell the company at fair value, based on real numbers. And I want Marcus bought out based on the actual company performance, not the fantasy he created. Richard smiled for the first time. Give me 72 hours. Sentinel revised their offer on Monday, $79 million, based on real EBITDA, a 4.2x multiple, $18 million less than the original offer. But fair, honest, based on what we'd actually built. The revised term sheet included one additional provision, mandatory forensic audit as a condition of closing, with representation and warranty insurance covering any additional discrepancies discovered. Standard practice in deals where fraud concerns exist. Marcus would need to sign off on it, would need to accept the reduced valuation, or walk away from the deal entirely. Richard called me that afternoon. We're sending the revised offer to all board members tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I wanted you to know first. Thank you. One more thing, he said. Our legal team strongly recommends you consult with counsel about your partner's actions. What he did potentially exposes the company to liability, and you personally as co-CEO. I'd already hired an attorney, corporate litigation specialist, former federal prosecutor. The Thursday meeting wasn't at our offices. Sentinel insisted on neutral territory, a law firm's conference room downtown, their lawyers, our lawyers, the full board. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early. So did I. We stood in the lobby together, not speaking, just waiting. When the elevator arrived, we rode up in silence. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, 16 chairs around a massive table, legal pads, bottled water, the machinery of corporate transactions. Richard Kelso was already there with his team, 3 lawyers, 2 analysts, his CFO. Everyone shook hands, took seats. Richard started without preamble. Thank you all for coming. I know the revised terms raise questions. I want to address those directly. He opened a folder, slid copies around the table. During our preliminary diligence, our team identified inconsistencies between reported revenue and underlying contract values. The discrepancies total approximately $6.2 million over 3 years. Marcus's face didn't change, but I watched his hands. They'd been resting flat on the table. Now they were gripping the edge. These discrepancies appear to have been systematically introduced into board reports and financial summaries used for valuation purposes. Our VC advisor leaned forward. What are you saying? That our numbers are wrong? I'm saying the numbers used to justify a 5.4 multiple don't match the actual contract data. The revised offer reflects actual EBITDA based on real contracts. Sarah, our CFO, spoke up. I prepared a preliminary analysis of this issue at the CEO's request 3 weeks ago. The inflation is real, it's documented, and it was deliberate. Every head turned toward Marcus. He sat perfectly still, then he smiled. You're right, he said. The numbers were optimized for presentation purposes. That's standard practice in our industry. Everyone inflates growth projections when talking to PE firms. It's part of the negotiation dance. Except these weren't projections, Richard said. These were reported as actual results, signed and verified quarterly reports to your board, some of whom made investment decisions based on these reports. Our VC advisor's face had gone white. Marcus shook his head. This is a misunderstanding, a difference in accounting methodology. My team was using forward-looking metrics, being aggressive about revenue recognition timing, but everything was within GAAP guidelines. No, Sarah said quietly. It wasn't. Marcus turned to her. Sarah, you're not an accountant. I'm a CPA with 15 years of experience. I know what revenue recognition looks like. This wasn't aggressive accounting. This was fabrication. The room went silent. Marcus looked at me finally. Really looked at me. You did this, he said. You sabotaged our deal. I disclosed fraud, I replied. There's a difference. Fraud? We built this company together. Every dollar of revenue was earned. Every client relationship was real. I just presented the growth more favorably. You lied to our board. You lied to investors. And you tried to sell the company based on those lies. He stood up. I'm not participating in this anymore. This is a setup, a coup. You want me out, just say it. I stayed seated. I want you bought out at fair value, based on real numbers, and I want you to accept responsibility for what you did. Or what? Richard Kelso spoke before I could. Or we withdraw our offer entirely, and we refer our findings to the SEC. Misrepresentation in the context of acquisition discussions is securities fraud, especially when board members have invested additional capital based on inflated metrics. Marcus looked around the table, looking for an ally, support, something. Our external board member wouldn't meet his eyes. Our VC advisor was staring at his copy of the report. Sarah was looking at her hands. How much? Marcus asked quietly. Based on your actual stake at actual valuation, Richard said, $21.4 million, plus any remaining equity you've earned under the vesting schedule. Marcus had been expecting $33 million. He'd just lost $12 million for lying. He sat back down slowly. And if I fight this, challenge the valuation. My lawyer spoke for the first time. Then we countersue for fraud. Seek disgorgement of any profits you made from misrepresented performance. And we file a detailed complaint with federal regulators documenting everything. Marcus looked at me. 15 years, he said. I know. And you're willing to throw it away over accounting differences? They're not accounting differences, they're lies. And yes, I'm willing to end a partnership built on lies. That was 4 months ago. I'm sitting in my new office now. Well, not really an office. A co-working space I rent by the month, small desk, window overlooking a park. I don't need a big office anymore. The company has a new CEO. Someone Sentinel brought in. Experienced operator. She's good. The team likes her. I stayed on as an advisor for 90 days. Helped with the transition. Made sure everyone landed okay. Most of the original team is still there. Growing, building, doing good work. Marcus moved to Arizona. Started consulting. I heard he's advising startups on growth strategy. I don't think about that ironically anymore. Don't waste energy on it. My daughter asked me about it last week. She'd heard something at a dinner party. Someone who knew someone who worked with Marcus. Do you regret it? She asked. Turning him in? You could have made so much more money. I thought about that question for a while. I don't regret doing the right thing, I said finally, but I regret that it was necessary. I regret that I trusted someone who was willing to betray that trust. I regret the years I didn't pay attention. So what now? Good question. I've been meeting with founders, young companies, people building something real. I invest, I advise, I help where I can, and I pay attention, not in a paranoid way, not looking for betrayal around every corner, but in a deliberate way, being present, asking questions, verifying what I'm told. Trust isn't blindness. Trust is an informed choice you make based on consistent evidence. Absolutely, I said. Partnership is how great things get built. But I'm more careful now about who I partner with, and I never stop paying attention. Here's what I learned from 15 years with Marcus and 4 months without him. Success built on lies always collapses eventually. The only question is how much damage it does when it falls. You can't delegate integrity. Either you have it or you don't. And no amount of shared history or friendship overrides that. The hardest decisions are the ones where both choices cost you something. Walking away from the bigger payout cost me $12 million, but living with fraud would have cost me something more valuable, my ability to trust my own judgment. I don't hate Marcus. That surprises people. They expect me to be bitter, angry, looking for revenge, but revenge isn't what happened here. Consequence happened. Natural cause and effect. He made choices. Those choices had predictable outcomes. When those outcomes arrived, he tried to avoid them, and he couldn't. That's not revenge. That's gravity. People call me lucky sometimes. Say I dodged a bullet. Got out before it all fell apart. They're wrong. Luck is random. What happened wasn't random. I paid attention. I documented what I found. I made hard choices based on evidence and principle. And when Marcus built a house of cards, I declined to live in it. Last week, I got an email from someone I don't know, a former employee at one of Marcus's previous companies, the one he sold before joining me. I saw the news about your company, the email said, about what happened with your partner. I wanted you to know something. He did the same thing at his last company. Inflated numbers, made the business look more valuable than it was. The buyers discovered it after closing, spent years in litigation. He walked away clean. I stared at that email for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because it doesn't change anything, doesn't make my decisions more right or less painful. But it did confirm something I'd suspected. Marcus wasn't a good person who made a mistake. He was someone who'd built a career on making the same mistake over and over with different people in different companies, until he finally found someone who was paying attention. I'm starting a new venture next month. Small team, simple idea. Building tools for other small businesses to monitor their finances, to help them see patterns before they become problems. One of my advisors asked if the business model would scale. Maybe, I said, but that's not the only goal. Sometimes you build something because it solves a problem you wish had been solved earlier. She smiled. Sounds personal. Everything worth doing is personal. I have a new partner on this venture, young guy, hungry, smart. Reminds me of myself 20 years ago. We've known each other for 8 months. We've worked on 3 projects together. I've watched how he handles pressure, how he treats people when no one important is watching. He's good, honest, careful about details. I still verify everything he tells me. Not because I don't trust him, because trust without attention isn't trust. It's just hope with a handshake. Marcus called me once after everything settled, 3 a.m. I almost didn't answer. I just wanted you to know, he said. I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it because I thought we'd both win. Bigger exit, more money for everyone. Except it was based on lies. Does that really matter if the outcome is good? And that's the question, isn't it? If fraud succeeds, does that make it acceptable? If betrayal goes unnoticed, was it really wrong? I thought about that question for exactly 3 seconds. Yes, I said. It matters. The outcome doesn't justify the method, not in business, not in friendship, not ever. He hung up. Haven't heard from him since. Someone asked me recently what I'd do differently if I could go back. The easy answer is I'd pay attention sooner, I'd catch the discrepancies earlier, I'd confront Marcus before it got so complicated. But that's not really true, because if I'd confronted him earlier, maybe he would have stopped, covered his tracks better, found a different way to inflate the valuation. Sometimes you have to let people expose themselves completely, not because you want them to fail, but because partial accountability doesn't teach anything. Marcus didn't lose $12 million because I caught him. He lost it because he decided to lie. And then he decided to lie again and again. Every choice had a consequence. I just made sure those consequences arrived. There's a photo on my desk now. It's from 2019. Company retreat in Montana, the whole team. Marcus and I are in the front row, arms around each other's shoulders, both grinning, sunburned, happy. I keep it there not because I miss him, but because it reminds me that betrayal doesn't announce itself. It looks like friendship until the moment it doesn't. And the only defense against that is attention, careful, constant, deliberate attention. I mentioned earlier that trust is built brick by brick. That's true, but here's what I didn't say then. Trust is also destroyed brick by brick. One small lie, one inflated number, one decision to prioritize profit over principle. And before you know it, you're standing in a conference room watching 15 years evaporate. Marcus taught me a lot about business, how to close deals, how to manage growth, how to scale operations. But the most valuable lesson he taught me, he didn't mean to. He taught me that attention isn't paranoia, it's respect. Respect for the truth. Respect for the people depending on you to protect what you've all built together. And respect for yourself. Because at the end of the day, you have to live with the decisions you make. Marcus is living with his in Arizona, wondering which startup will be naive enough to trust him completely. And I'm living with mine here, building something new with someone who understands that trust isn't blind. It's earned, it's verified, and it's protected. They thought I wouldn't notice. They were wrong. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. It helps others find these stories. And if you want more tales about consequences, justice, and what happens when patience meets principle, subscribe. News stories every week. Sometimes revenge is loud, sometimes it's quiet, but it's always inevitable. Thanks for listening.